Growing up in the 1960s means you remember this. If you grew up in the 1960s, you remember more than just the headlines. You remember the feeling, the toys, the tunes, the teasing combs and crackling TVs. Some things you had to be there to understand. Ready to unlock those memories? Let's rewind to a time when life was louder, simpler, and full of unforgettable firsts. Boys' Life magazine. If you had scraped elbows, muddy sneakers, and a pocket knife clipped to your belt, you probably had a rolled-up copy of Boys' Life magazine tucked somewhere close by. Launched in 1911 and proudly carried by the Boy Scouts of America, Boys' Life was more than just a magazine. It was a gateway to wild adventure. By the 1960s, every issue felt like a survival guide for the young and fearless. Inside, you'd find stories of outdoor courage, handy how-to guides, hilarious comics, gear ads that sparked daydreams, and corny jokes that always got a laugh at the campfire. Just having a subscription felt like earning an invisible merit badge. You'd read it front to back, then trade it with your buddy like you were passing along a treasure map. Whether you were a scout or not, Boys' Life made you believe you were born for the wild, ready for anything, anywhere. Swanson TV Dinners. There's a special kind of memory tucked inside the sound of a foil tray sliding into the oven. If you grew up in the 1960s, you know exactly what I mean. Sunday nights meant gathering at Grandma's house with Dad kicked back in his recliner, the glow of the TV casting shadows, and the mouth-watering smell of Swanson's fried chicken wafting through the room. Swanson didn't just make frozen meals. They created an entirely new way for American families to eat. Those iconic trays with neatly divided portions of meat, veggies, and that scorching hot brownie felt like a little feast made just for you. More than just convenience, these dinners marked a shift in how we spent time together, bringing the family out of the dining room and into the living room. It was modern, it was easy, and somehow it made the night feel just right. The Twilight Zone and the Outer Limits. There was something hauntingly powerful about those black and white screens that could stop you in your tracks, even after the credits faded to black. In the early 1960s, the Twilight Zone wasn't just a show, it was an experience. Rod Serling's calm, measured voice drew you into strange worlds that looked like ours, until they didn't. Every episode came with a twist, a lesson, and a lingering question that stayed with you long after bedtime. Just a few years later, the Outer Limits took things further, opening with the eerie line, "There is nothing wrong with your television set." It was darker, more monstrous, filled with strange creatures, otherworldly threats, and moody visuals that felt way ahead of their time. These weren't just spooky stories, they were mirrors, reflecting human nature, fear, and curiosity. For kids growing up then, they sparked something deeper than fright. They made you think, and they made you wonder. Batman, 1966 TV series. If you were a kid in the 1960s, Saturday nights weren't just another night. They were electric. And nothing lit up the screen or our imaginations quite like Batman. The moment that "nah, nah, 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 Batman" theme exploded from the TV, I'd bolt into the living room, school socks sliding on the floor, heart racing to catch the action. Premiering in 1966, this wasn't just a superhero show, it was a kaleidoscope of color, camp, and cliffhangers. Adam West's deadpan Batman, Burt Ward's eager Robin, and a parade of wild, over-the-top villains turned each episode into a mini-adventure. The bam and pow fight scenes weren't just fun, they were unforgettable. But the real magic? It was a shared moment. Sitting together as a family, laughing, wide-eyed, caught up in the excitement. For one perfect half hour, we were all in Gotham, and it felt like home. Apollo moon landing. There was something truly special about summer nights in the late 1960s. My cousins and I would sprawl out on the freshly cut lawn, staring at the endless stars above, pretending we were astronauts on a secret mission, waiting for liftoff. Back at school, those clunky black and white TVs would be wheeled into our classrooms like treasure chests, and we'd watch wide-eyed as rockets like Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo blasted into the sky. It wasn't just science, it was pure wonder. But nothing compared to July 20th, 1969. The moment Neil Armstrong stepped onto the moon, it felt like the whole world held its breath, and then exhaled in disbelief and joy. Share your story in the comments and let's take a walk down memory lane together. Duck and cover drills. If you were a kid in the early 1960s, chances are you remember the sharp clang of the school bell, quickly followed by a voice shouting, "Duck and cover!" It wasn't just a drill, it was a sign of the times. Back then, the fear of nuclear war wasn't distant or abstract. It lived right there with us in the classrooms, on our television sets, and in the quiet corners of our homes. I remember crouching under a wooden desk, hands over my head, knees trembling, as if that flimsy desk could protect us from a bomb. My dad even turned our basement into a makeshift fallout shelter, lining the shelves with canned beans and jugs of water after one of President Kennedy's chilling speeches. To us kids, it sometimes felt like a game, like we were brave little spies. But in truth, it shaped how we saw the world. Forever alert, forever changed. The Beatles' arrival in America. You could hear the scream from coast to coast when the Beatles touched down at JFK Airport in 1964. It wasn't just a band arriving, it was the spark that lit an entire generation on fire. I still remember sitting cross-legged on the living room carpet, soda pop fizzing beside me, glued to the Ed Sullivan Show as those four boys from Liverpool sang their hearts out. My older sister practically lost her voice shrieking. It was like Elvis had returned, only multiplied by 4. With their mop-top hair, sharp suits, and charming grins, the Beatles didn't just play music. They brought a new energy, a sense of something bigger coming. Beatlemania was more than screaming fans and catchy songs. It was a cultural shift. For millions of American kids, that night wasn't just entertainment. It was the beginning of a whole new world, one chord at a time. American Bandstand. Back in the 1960s, Saturdays had their own beat, and it came straight from American Bandstand. With Dick Clark as the ever-cool host, his smooth voice made every teen feel like they were right there on the dance floor. This wasn't just a TV show, it was the soundtrack of our youth. From our living rooms, we watched as Motown legends, pop stars, and rock newcomers lit up the screen. Smokey Robinson, Stevie Wonder, Sonny and Cher, and so many more. Every week brought a new sound and a new dance. Whether it was the twist, the mashed potato, or the pony, we copied every step and practiced them until we got it just right. But more than the music, Bandstand gave us something bigger, a sense of belonging. It connected kids from every corner of the country and made Saturday afternoons feel like the heartbeat of a generation. Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. Some memories don't fade, they shine in vivid color. And for many of us growing up in the 1960s, Sunday nights meant one thing: Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color. That show wasn't just a TV program, it was a weekly escape into a world of wonder. The moment that rainbow-colored intro swirled across the screen on NBC, the ordinary melted away. We'd gather on the floor, still in our stiff church clothes, while Dad adjusted the rabbit ears, trying to fix the fuzz. And then came Walt's familiar voice, calm and welcoming, inviting us on an adventure that might include cartoons, nature documentaries, or magical peeks behind the scenes of Disneyland. Banana bikes and summer dares. Back in the 1960s, summers had a kind of freedom that's hard to describe but impossible to forget. Sunscreen? Optional? Helmets? Never heard of them. Our banana bikes were our pride and joy, with tall handlebars and long, cushy seats made for cruising the neighborhood like kings of the pavement. All we needed was a steep hill, a friend who was just wild enough to race with no hands, and the thrill of wind in our faces. I still laugh, thinking about the day in '67 when Tommy dared me to ride with my eyes closed. We both went flying straight into Mrs. Parker's prized rose bushes. Childhood then wasn't packed with plans or screens. It was dusty roads, lemonade stands, and dreams as big as the moon. Even when the world felt noisy and uncertain, those simple, wide-open days gave us room to imagine, explore, and just be kids. Tell us which one you had and what it meant to you growing up. Star Trek, 1966 TV series. In 1966, this wasn't just a sci-fi show, it was a bold vision of what the future could be. Each week, the USS Enterprise didn't just visit distant planets, it explored ideas we weren't always ready to face here on Earth. I used to watch it with my uncle, a quiet Vietnam veteran who barely reacted to anything on TV, except for Spock's raised eyebrow or Scotty's last-minute miracle. The show gave us more than aliens and phasers. It showed a world where people of every background worked together, where problems were solved with logic, not violence. At a time when the news was filled with division and war, Star Trek offered a calm, thoughtful escape, and, more importantly, hope. Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Some toys never really fade away. They punch their way right into our memories. And if you were a kid in the late 60s, you'll remember the thrill of Rock'em Sock'em Robots. Those noisy little plastic boxers were pure joy in a red and blue ring. My cousin Jake and I would go round after round, mashing those buttons like our lives depended on it, yelling, "Gotcha!" the moment a robot's head popped up. Designed by Marvin Glass and launched by Marx in 1964, it wasn't fancy, but it was loud, fast, and fun. And if battling bots wasn't your thing, Major Matt Mason from Mattel let you take your adventures beyond the stars. Modeled after real NASA astronauts, he looked ready for liftoff, till those bendy wire limbs gave out. But even then, these toys weren't just playthings. They were fuel for the wild, limitless imaginations of a generation raised on rockets and comic books. Howard Johnson's. Was it even a real road trip if you didn't spot that bright orange roof and start begging for a stop? For families in the 1950s and 60s, Howard Johnson's wasn't just a restaurant. It was an essential part of the adventure. Whether you were packed into the family station wagon or cruising in Dad's big Buick, seeing those signature cupola roofs and turquoise signs felt like hitting a familiar checkpoint. With friendly staff in cheerful uniforms and a menu you could always count on, Hojo's gave weary travelers a comforting slice of home. Their legendary fried clams, crispy and golden, always tasted better in a vinyl booth. And those 28 ice cream flavors? A kid's dream come true. If you got a cone after dinner, that meant the day had gone just right. Twister and Hot Wheels. Introduced by Milton Bradley. In 1966, this game turned any party into a tangled mess of limbs, socks, and laughter. It didn't matter how old you were once that spinner landed on right-hand red, it was game on. Twister was one of the first games that made getting close part of the fun, and people loved every awkward second. Meanwhile, kids with a need for speed were obsessed with Hot Wheels, which zoomed into toy stores in 1968. Shiny cars with flame decals raced down orange plastic tracks that clicked together like magic. And let's not forget the classics. Barbies, G.I. Joes, and astronaut figurines that let us chase dreams bigger than our living rooms. Schwinn Sting-Ray. There's nothing quite like the freedom of that first solo ride around the block. The wind in your face, no parents in sight, just you and the open sidewalk. In the mid-1960s, that feeling had a name, the Schwinn Sting-Ray. This wasn't just a bike, it was a statement. With its banana seat, sky-high ape-hanger handlebars, and low-slung frame, the Stingray looked more like a muscle car on two wheels than a kid's bike. Al Fritz designed it in 1963, inspired by the hot-rodding California kids who were turning basic bikes into chopper-style cruisers. And when Schwinn released it, boom! Every kid on the block wanted one. I'll never forget the day I got mine. Metallic blue with white handle grips and a shiny sissy bar that scraped the pavement when I stopped too fast. That bike didn't just take me around town, it made me feel like I could conquer the world. Thank you for watching. To continue with more content, comment 1 to let us know you're still following. Walter Cronkite's Vietnam broadcast. In February 1968, something happened that shook the nation. Not on a battlefield, but on our television screens. Walter Cronkite, the most trusted man in American news, stepped away from his usual calm, objective tone after witnessing the Vietnam War firsthand during the Tet Offensive. In a rare moment of editorial honesty, he looked straight into the camera and called the war a stalemate. For families like mine, who gathered every night around the TV to hear his voice, it was more than a report, it was a reckoning. If Cronkite was questioning the war, something had truly changed. Even President Lyndon Johnson reportedly felt the shift, saying, "If I've lost Cronkite, I've lost Middle America." That one broadcast did more than just inform the public. It helped to steer national opinion. It showed the power of the evening news, not just to reflect reality, but to challenge it. Metal strap-on roller skates. If you grew up in the 60s, then you know real childhood danger came with 4 metal wheels and a key around your neck. I'm talking about those clunky metal roller skates, the ones you strapped over your sneakers with leather buckles that never quite stayed tight. They rattled like an old grocery cart and made the sidewalk feel like an obstacle course. But we didn't care. The thrill of speed, the wind in your hair, and that feeling of freedom were worth every wobble and wipeout. Inspired by James Plimpton's 1863 quad skate design, these skates had one brilliant feature. They were adjustable, growing with your feet. And sure, skating rinks were popping up, but the real action? That was right outside your front door. Racing down the block, dodging rocks, and praying your wheels didn't go flying off at the corner. It wasn't just fun, it was fearless. Tang and space food sticks. Back in the 60s, if you wanted to feel like a real astronaut, you didn't need a spaceship, just a glass of Tang. That bright orange powder mixed with water wasn't just a sugary drink. It was your first step towards space. After NASA sent Tang along on John Glenn's 1962 mission, every kid with stars in their eyes had to have it. We believed one sip could take us straight to the moon, and then there were space food sticks. Those chewy, crayon-shaped snacks that somehow straddled the line between strange and awesome. They were dense, rubbery, and came in funky flavors like chocolate and peanut butter, but we didn't flinch. If astronauts were eating them in zero gravity, we were happy to do the same at the kitchen table. Easy Bake Oven. When Kenner rolled out the Easy Bake Oven in 1963, it instantly became more than just another toy. It was every kid's entry ticket into the grown-up world of cooking. Shaped like a tiny pastel oven and powered by 2 simple 100-watt light bulbs, this little appliance worked magic. Slide a pan in one side, let the bulb do its job, and out came a warm, slightly lopsided treat. Cookies, cupcakes, even brownies. I still remember my little sister handing me a vanilla cake she baked herself, still gooey in the middle but beaming with pride. That was the magic of the Easy Bake. It wasn't about perfect recipes or fancy techniques. It was about feeling independent, creative, and capable. For many of us, it was the first time we felt the joy of serving something homemade. Proof that a dash of imagination and a light bulb could go a long, delicious way. Jell-O mold creations. If you grew up in the 1960s, chances are your dinner table, especially at family gatherings, featured a Jell-O mold that looked more like a science project than a side dish. Every family had that one aunt who saw Jell-O not as dessert, but as art. With a flick of the wrist and a trusty bundt pan, she'd create colorful towers of gelatin packed with whatever she had on hand. Sometimes it was fruit and marshmallows. Other times it was shredded carrots, tuna, or, brace yourself, green olives. You never quite knew what was waiting inside that wobbly, translucent dome. Jell-O even encouraged the creativity with flavors like celery and Italian salad. Kids approached it with a mix of curiosity and dread. But love was baked, well, chilled, into every mold. Jiffy Pop. Before microwaves took over the kitchen, there was Jiffy Pop. And if you grew up in the 60s, you know it wasn't just popcorn. It was an event. You'd tear off the cardboard top, place that shiny silver dome on the burner, and wait for the magic to happen. At first, it just sat there, quiet. Then came the faint sizzle, a pop, then another, and suddenly the whole thing puffed up like a balloon. It was like a science experiment and a snack all in one. Invented in 1958 by Frederick Menon, Jiffy Pop gave kids the thrill of cooking something real, with just a little shake of the handle and a whole lot of anticipation. That golden foil crown meant something special was happening. And the payoff? Warm, buttery popcorn that always felt like a homemade victory. The Jetsons. If you were a kid in the early 1960s, the future wasn't some distant mystery. It was right there on your TV screen every Sunday night, thanks to the Jetsons. Premiering in 1962 on ABC, this animated series gave us a peek into a world filled with flying cars, moving sidewalks, talking appliances, and sassy robot maids like Rosie. It was one of the first shows ever broadcast in color, making its shiny space-age vision even more magical. Though it only aired 24 original episodes, the show's impact was massive. The Jetsons wasn't just a cartoon, it was an open invitation to imagine. Back then, we still had rotary phones and black and white TVs, so seeing George Jetson press a button to make dinner or video chat from his desk felt like science fiction come true. Good Luck Trolls. Created in 1959 by Danish woodcarver Thomas Dam, as a simple gift for his daughter, these quirky little figures quickly became global icons. Originally carved from wood with wild woolen hair, they were equal parts weird and wonderful. By 1964, their popularity had skyrocketed so much that Dam reportedly bought up Iceland's entire wool supply just to keep up with the demand. Kids believed that if you rubbed their bright neon hair, good luck would follow. And honestly, most of us didn't need convincing. Whether they sat on your bookshelf, clung to your pencils, or adorned your lunchbox, trolls were the must-have charm of the moment. TV tube testers. Back in the 1960s, Saturday mornings had their own special routine. Cartoons with a bowl of cornflakes, then a trip to the local drugstore with Dad to test the TV tubes. Before the age of flat screens and smart TVs, those big boxy sets ran on vacuum tubes. And when the picture turned snowy or the sound fizzled out, you didn't call a repairman. You grabbed a paper sack of warm glass tubes and headed to the pharmacy. Near the photo counter, there was always a big metal tester machine, buzzing faintly like it knew secrets. You'd plug in each tube one by one, watching the little needle anxiously. Good meant relief. Bad meant replacement. I'd stand there proud just to be part of it, while Dad chatted with the pharmacist. And if we fixed the problem, we'd be back on the couch that night, just in time for the Sunday movie, TV glowing like new. Go-Go boots. These sleek mid-calf icons weren't just shoes, they were a full-on fashion revolution. First introduced by French designer André Courrèges, Go-Go boots quickly strutted off the runway and onto American sidewalks. With their space-age look, low square heels, and glossy vinyl finish, they captured the fearless spirit of a generation that was stepping into the spotlight. Whether you were dancing along with Hullabaloo or watching your older sister tease her hair and zip up her pair before a school dance, those boots symbolized style, sass, and self-assurance. They made a statement. You were bold, modern, and ready to move. And once they were on your feet, you didn't just walk, you glided, full of confidence, making every sidewalk feel like your own personal catwalk. Which of these 1960s memories brought back the strongest feelings for you and why? Roger Maris, Mickey Mantle, in the summer of '61. In the summer of 1961, you didn't need soap operas or cliffhangers. Baseball had it all. That year, the entire country tuned in as Roger Maris and Mickey Mantle battled it out, chasing Babe Ruth's legendary 60 home run record. Mantle, the fan favorite, was all swagger and spotlight. But when an injury pulled him from the race, it was quiet, humble Maris who kept swinging. And on October 1st, he cracked number 61 into the stands and into the history books. Kids everywhere were caught in the excitement, flipping Topps cards on sidewalks, trading stats like stocks and chewing through sticks of bubblegum as if each pack might hold a slice of greatness. Owning a Mantle card was bragging rights. Pulling Maris? That was gold. Cap guns. Bang! That sharp pop and puff of smoke could only mean one thing. Someone just drew their Stallion 45. In the 50s and 60s, cap guns weren't just toys. They were the ultimate badge of backyard bravery. Every kid wanted one, and every game somehow turned into a Wild West showdown. Whether you were chasing bandits through the bushes or staging a high-noon duel at the mailbox, those tiny red rolls of paper caps brought the action to life. The smell of gunpowder, the crack of each shot, the way your fingers turned black from the caps, it was pure excitement. Inspired by real 1800s, percussion cap guns and fueled by the popularity of TV cowboys like Roy Rogers and Hopalong Cassidy, these toy revolvers looked so real they could pass at a glance. Brands like Mattel and Nichols turned out masterpieces, and for a few dusty, loud minutes, you were the story. Sea monkeys. Created by Harold von Braunhut. In 1957, these tiny brine shrimp came packaged like magic. Just add water, and suddenly life would begin to wiggle and swim in your living room. The comic book ads, illustrated by Joe Orlando, promised way more than science. They showed smiling, humanoid sea creatures with families, castles, and a whole bubbly civilization. What you actually got were specks swimming in a plastic tank. But for a kid, that was enough. You'd watch them grow, feed them carefully, and imagine entire worlds beneath the surface. They even made it to space with John Glenn in 1998. The Andy Griffith Show. When The Andy Griffith Show first aired in 1960, it didn't just entertain, it comforted. Set in the fictional town of Mayberry, it captured the charm of small-town life with a gentle touch that stood in stark contrast to the turbulence of the decade. Sheriff Andy Taylor with his calm wisdom, his curious son Opie, the lovable but bumbling Barney Fife and sweet Aunt Bee felt more like neighbors than characters on a screen. Each episode wrapped a simple problem in humor, heart, and a quiet moral, reminding us that patience, kindness, and a good front porch talk could go a long way. The show's popularity sparked spin-offs like Gomer Pyle, USMC, and decades later, its reruns still hold up. Watching it felt like returning home, to a place where life slowed down just enough to appreciate the small things. And that feeling never really left. Surf music. Sunshine, sea breeze, and a guitar that sounded like it was riding a wave. That was surf music. In the early 1960s, it wasn't just a genre, it was a way of life. It all kicked off with Dick Dale, the king of the surf guitar, whose rapid-fire picking and reverb-soaked riffs in Let's Go Trippin', 1961, created a sound that felt like surfing. His music was raw, wild, and electric, like catching the perfect wave at full speed. Then came the Beach Boys and Jan and Dean, with their silky vocal harmonies and sun-drenched lyrics about hot rods, girls, and hanging ten. Even if you'd never seen the ocean, their music made you feel like you were there. Through transistor radios and 45s, surf music gave kids everywhere a window into California's endless summer. Carefree, rebellious, and totally unforgettable. Jacks! Before screens and batteries ruled playtime, all it took was a small rubber ball and a handful of jacks to create endless fun. By the 1960s, this age-old game, dating all the way back to ancient Greece and Rome, had become a staple of schoolyards, front porches, and playgrounds across America. The rules were simple, but the challenge was real. Whether you were playing onesies or working your way up to eightsies, jacks tested your hand-eye coordination, rhythm, and nerves of steel. I can still see my sister flicking that ball in the air and scooping up the jacks with lightning speed, ending with her signature victory dance and a grin that said it all. In a fast-changing world filled with new technology and futuristic dreams, jacks held on to something timeless, a kind of joy that came not from flashing lights but from skill, laughter, and the pure thrill of getting it just right. The Beehive Hairdo. In the 1960s, big hair wasn't just fashion, it was a declaration. And nothing said style louder than the iconic Beehive. With its sculpted height and swirling volume, the Beehive turned everyday women into glam queens, right there in their kitchens or at the corner store. Armed with teasing combs, bobby pins, and a cloud of Aquanet hairspray, women spent their mornings building a hairstyle that didn't just sit, it stood. The Beehive wasn't subtle, and it wasn't meant to be. It was confident, commanding, and a little rebellious. Inspired by stars like Dusty Springfield, Audrey Hepburn, and even your neighbor down the block, it blurred the line between celebrity style and suburban chic. Whether you were headed to the diner or just picking up groceries, that towering hair said, "I showed up, and I mean business." Wham-O Super Ball. What toy could fly higher than your roof, vanish into the neighbor's yard, and send your dog into a frenzy? That would be the legendary Wham-O Super Ball. Released in the mid-1960s, this little black sphere looked unassuming, but once you bounced it, all bets were off. Made from a top-secret synthetic rubber called Zectron, the Super Ball didn't just rebound, it launched. One hard slam to the pavement, and it would rocket skyward, ricochet off walls, and sometimes disappear completely. Kids were hooked, chasing it across driveways and dodging it like it had a personality. Even adults couldn't resist its odd charm. Rumor has it the Super Ball even inspired the name for the Super Bowl. In an age before smartphones and consoles, it delivered non-stop, unpredictable fun. It didn't need batteries or buttons, just a bit of sidewalk and a strong arm. The Super Ball was pure, bouncing chaos, and we loved every second of it. Those 1960s memories may have faded from the headlines, but they're forever etched in our hearts. If we missed one of your favorites, drop it in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, and explore more from Past Not Past. Thanks for joining us on this nostalgic journey. We'll see you in the next one.